Hey everybody, welcome to the show. I'm your host Sandman. Today we're going to be discussing lockpicking for law enforcement and emergency medical services. Let's get into it. I recently received an email from someone overseas in Europe, and they are asking what type of tools I think would be best for them to carry while on the job. Let's get into the email. Hello Sandman, I work in law enforcement in the French Gendarmerie and the PSIG. We are very often the first to arrive and on all types of missions. No worries about the budget. I would like something that can open padlocks, house doors, bike chains, and U-shaped locks for protesters. Maybe car trunks and car doors for older cars instead of breaking the windows. I might never use them. I don't know. But 2 times last week, we had to wait for firefighters to arrive with a huge bolt cutter to cut a padlock. I mean, I could have picked the thing in less than a minute, I suppose. It would have been better. That's why I have been watching your videos. Maybe I should go with 2 sets. A minimalist one on my combat vest that I can carry all the time, and another one more complete in variety in the service car. What do you think? Would you recommend or multiple specific sets? I live in Western Europe. We have many dimple locks. I have been watching videos and reading forums, but it's a very specific topic, and I don't want to buy a Big Tim 200 euro set that contains 90% of picks I will never use. I was thinking of buying the Covert Instruments 3 sets, the Genesis, the Echelon, and the Arbiter, but I have heard it's more American-oriented, maybe Multipick. Thank you, sir. Sorry to bother you. If you don't have time to answer, it's okay. Take care, Max. So Max, I actually gave this a lot of thought, so much so that I'm probably about 2 weeks too late to reply. I told you I'd reply, and 2 weeks have gone by. I apologize for that. First off, let me talk about myself really quick, because I'm really good at doing that, right? So in 2011, I actually went through a police academy for 6 months myself. And actually, let's go further back. 2005, I joined the Marines. And 2011, I went through a law enforcement officer academy, and I graduated after 6 months of training. And in 2012, I was a private security contractor, or private military contractor rather, for a short time. In here, I went to Iraq. Okay, and here I went to Afghanistan. That's fine. And then from 2012 all the way up to 2016, I worked in private security. So I just did private security detail, PSD, but I was a licensed armed guard, which is a level 4 for the state of Texas, and I was a PPO, personal protective officer, PPO. So I was actually a licensed by the state of Texas bodyguard. So I don't have law enforcement training, but however, what I do have is 10 years of private security and military, okay, and private security and military. And on top of that, I also am a formally trained locksmith, and I do locksport for hobby. My locksmith I was a locksmith in 2009 for a period of 6 months, and 2016 for a period of 3 months working for a different outfit. So in 2016, I worked for Papa Lock. So that's my background. I'm touching upon this because I have an opinion on what I think you can carry, because, well, I worked in private security for 10 years, and being a locksmith, working for Papa Lock, and being doing all the things that I've done, I've carried tools on the job, and I have used them on the job. So I feel that I can at least give you a qualified opinion, and my opinion is to go somewhere else. Just kidding. No, my opinion is to first, because you are in law enforcement, I just recently finished reading this book called Tactical Lockpicking, Volume 1, Foundations by Pat Watson. Pat Watson is a former law enforcement officer, a canine handler. He was also Coast Guard, but he worked side by side with like DEA and ATF and other government entities, doing drug interdictions and things like that. So he's really high speed, low drag kind of guy. And he has a really great mindset for exactly what you are looking for. And I would like to recommend his book first and foremost, before anything else. I really like his methodology of teaching. I've listened to dozens of hours of his podcasts. I don't agree with everything that he says, but I don't have to. I can learn from him the things that I don't know personally, and I can add my own experiences to my own toolbox. One thing that he touches upon that he just does it so eloquently, he does it so well, and it may be talked about in other areas, but I never really considered it this way until I read his book. And that is, he has these 3 lines of gear. And the 3 lines of gear are, we have the first line gear. Sorry, my camera's shaking. The first line gear is defined as the tools you routinely carry on your person. Okay, and then we have the second line gear. Let me touch on that real quick. Second line gear is known as a packing list of tools that are stored in a small go bag. Okay, and then we have our third line gear, which is going to be essentially all the tools that we cannot fit in a bag or on our body in a pocket that will essentially either stay in a vehicle or a larger van, or maybe even are going to stay at, maybe we might keep them, you know, at an off-site location, you know, like a schoolhouse or the main department building or something like that. But typically probably your vehicle, something too heavy to put in a backpack. And it's certainly not something you're just going to be walking around with. But let's talk about that first line gear real quick. So first line gear, the tools you routinely carry on your person. So that's going to be your everyday carry. And you're asking me what you should carry. And that's really just going to be based off of your demographic. When I was in Iraq, though I was in Iraq and I was picking locks in Iraq, I was picking locks on U.S. military installations. So all of the hardware that I was getting access into for various reasons were U.S.-based hardware. So I didn't have to try to study or learn or collect locks that were to the demographic of Iraq. I just had to pick the U.S. stamped padlocks that were installed by the Marines or United States Army. So therefore, my first recommendation is, you're asking what type of tools you should buy. It's really solely dependent upon the type of locks that are in your demographic. But most locks are going to be a pin tumbler type, whether they be an inline pin tumbler or they are going to be a dimple lock type. So you can get through most of those locks with just a jackknife tool. I realize he said that there are a lot of dimple locks. We'll get to that. But just a simple jackknife tool, whether that be a Swick or a Lockmaster based out of Germany, or a Covert Instruments Slim Pickens right here. Any of these can be put in your pocket. They can be put on a keychain. Even if you were to go with a Covert Companion that has lockpicks that are removable from this. Everybody's like, you can't pick locks with this. Guys, they have the Slim Pickens and you can remove the lockpicks from this unit right here. So I can take lockpicks out of this and pick or whatever. Or I can have all my bypass tools. I can have so much in here. And this can go in my pocket. It can go in my belt. It can also go in a backpack. It just depends on you and what is most important to you. I probably would not want to put this on my body. I would rather have things that are going to be more important to my job, like life-saving tools or life-taking tools. So tools that make holes or plug holes. That's what I would rather have instead of one of these on my body. But I can see me putting one of these things in a pocket. I mean, they're just the size of a pocket knife. And that's what I personally would put into my everyday carry for my first line gear that I have on my person. There's a lot of different types of tools that can do that, that also offer some bypass options here. So like this is from Tough Possum. These tools are actually made by Southern Specialties. I have turning tools here. I have jiggler tools and some other bypass tools. I actually have some warded lock tools and other tools that are going to be very popular here in North America. And I even have tools for picking and raking. And this is very slim. I like something like this. And I'll provide a link in the description down below. This is an option. You know, there's so many different options. It really comes down to, honestly, lockpicks are just a very personal choice. I could tell you what's best and you could disagree, but I like this. And I love that this could be in your pocket and it's almost got like this rubberized material that it's not going to corrode in my pocket. So this is a good option too. There's a lot of really great options. I mean, something like this from Dangerfield is a decent option. I don't have any bypass options here, but it just comes down to what you are comfortable with. I would definitely recommend a Covert Instruments Slim Pickens, the Tough Possum lockpick set right here, or a Lockmaster like this, or the Swick right there. Any any of these are going to work. Any of these are going to work just fine in a pinch, and they're really great for fitting in your pocket. You know, that's a really solid recommendation for line 1. So let's talk about the line 2 here real quick. Another thing that I've started carrying on my body, because actually this is line 2, so we're going to talk about line 2. Yeah. So line 1, everyday carry. What can you fit comfortably in a pocket? I definitely want to carry a full-size lockpick set when I can carry some Narcan, or I can carry an EpiPen, or I can carry, you know, like a safe vac or something that actually saves somebody's life. I would carry something like that instead, because I know I can probably dynamic entry my way through a door if I needed to save somebody's life quicker than I can with tools. Now, the second line gear is something that you can carry in a go bag. Now, this may be something, if you're in an environment where you are capable of carrying a bag almost everywhere you go, like, you know, you're going into a commercial site and you don't want to walk back to your car that's maybe parked down the block or inside the parking garage, you're probably going to grab a go bag regardless. Something I would put in the go bag would be a full-size lockpick set. Instead of something small like this, I would definitely go with something full size, whatever that may be for you. This is my everyday carry for my line 2 gear. My line 2 is, I carry a sling bag that I take it everywhere with me. I have 2 different sling bags. One that I take with me to hospitals that doesn't have my pistol, and one that does have a pistol that I can't take with me into hospitals. So whatever a full-size lockpick set means to you, you just need a minimum of 2 to 3 tools, you know, at least 1 rake and at least 1 hook pick to get you going. And then, you know, maybe a very small assortment of tension tools. And then in that go bag, since you should have more rooms, I like to use full-size bypass tools. We did talk about the Covert Companion, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with this. These bypass tools are the same as what's in the Arbiter, but I like using full-size bypass tools. And this is just the Arbiter set plus a few extra tricks that I've added along the way. So my actual line 2 carry that I don't carry on my person, sometimes I used to carry this in my front pocket by itself, but I now just carry a jackknife instead. But now that I carry my sling bag, I carry this, this, and this. This is in my everyday carry off body. It's like it can be called a 1.5 or a 0.2 carry as we read in the tactical lockpicking. So I have my bypass tools, I have my lockpicking tools, but then I also have a backup set of lockpicking tools. So I have my leashy tools. I have 3 leashy tools in here: Master Lock, Schleg. This covers every Schleg keyway available because it's an SC20, and this covers the majority of my quick set locks because it's a KW5. So that's what I'm going to encounter here in North America. What I would challenge you, that if you are in Europe, then I would like to ask you to figure out what type of pin tumblers are common in in Western Europe, and what type of leashy type tools, like a Yale, from, I think the brand is called YKK, I could be wrong, but there's a couple brands that make leashy clones, specifically for pin tumblers. That's something I would recommend that you can put in your go bag for your line 2. Alternatively, you had mentioned that you run into a lot of dimple locks. Now, obviously, it's going to be an easy recommendation to say, well, you could just get yourself a dimple lockpick set like this. This is the Lock Noob Community Edition dimple pick set from Multipick. And however, there is a danger to picking dimple locks that are not padlocks specifically as well, because if you're picking a residential or commercial dimple lock and you have to rotate that plug 180 degrees or further, you're probably going to mess up the lock. Those pins are probably going to drop into the keyway of the lock. So unless you are well seasoned in picking those locks and being able to manipulate your tool in such a way that you will not allow the driver pins to drop into the keyway and bricking the lock, not breaking, but bricking it, and basically mucking up your whole situation, then I would like to recommend that because this is going to go into a backpack, it's going to be off body or a 1.5, you know, it's something you carry with you. I would like to recommend a rotary type tool. Any brand will probably work. They're all based off of the same design. I like Data Tools. I actually know the owner, he's a nice guy. You can purchase these from Vent, and I will provide a link in the description down below. And the goal is to try to find the ones that are most applicable for your demographic. For me in North America, we run into multi-lock. Multi-lock is very common in North America. So I carry a right-handed and a left-handed multi-lock one. And the great thing about this is this fills up that keyway, so when you need to go rotate the plug, you don't have to worry about the pins dropping in. So this is more reliable for residential and commercial type locks. If you are picking a padlock, you may not have to rotate that plug all the way, but there's still a danger there if you're not careful. I've had several multi-locks that you can rotate that plug just a little too far and drop those pins. So this is what I would carry if I was working in private security, law enforcement, emergency medical services as well. Now, someone could say, well, Sandman, why are you picking locks? Well, people that don't work in that profession don't understand that there is a thing called polite entry. Let's write that down real quick. So we have locksmithing, we have locksport, and then we have TLP, which is tactical lock picking. Now, I didn't come up with that term. I don't know if Pat Watson came up with that term or not. Pat Watson right there. But I used to call this practical lock picking. Practical. And I used to call it that because I just wasn't good at picking locks. So what I did was I devised my own plan of attack. And what that was is I would spend 30 seconds raking, and then I would spend 30 seconds single pin picking. And then if I couldn't single pin pick it, then I would pull out a bump key and I would spend 30 seconds using the bump method. And if I couldn't get it with a bump key, then I would probably, all in all, I don't remember what method I would do next after this. I haven't thought about this in like 10 years, but I would basically have a sequence of events that I would try, and it would total 2 minutes. If I could not get into that lock within 2 minutes, then I am wasting everybody's time. I really am. I'm wasting their time. I'm wasting my time. The person that needs help is probably, you know, the whole situation. I'm becoming a liability in this situation. And so you need to look for another way in. Or if you have more than 2 minutes, you have 20 minutes to kill, then I would go back and I would do this whole sequence of events again and see if I get lucky, trying different tools in the process. So I'd go back to raking with a different rake. I'd go back to single pin picking with a different turning tool and a different pick. And then I'd go back to bumping with, maybe I would add some springs, or I'd add those little rubber bumpers that are actually for castrating animals. So I would just vary my techniques until my time limit was up, whatever that time limit is. And that's different for everybody. And this is all for polite entry. And I will talk about purposes of that for the civilians here that have never worked in any of these previous capacities. So sometimes law enforcement needs to gain access, let's say through a front door. Maybe the back door has bars, and the only way to get through the back door is to destroy that door. In the front door, a sweet little old lady fell on the inside of that door, broke her hip, and I think I may be actually quoting a story from this book, but it's a good story. An old elderly person falls, hurts their hip, but they're not in any severe amount of pain. Their condition is stable for the time being, and they're requesting that you don't break down their door because they live alone and they need to be able to secure the door if they have to go to the hospital overnight. So before you start breaking windows and before you start kicking down doors, then it could be an opportunity to use your limited time that you have, that time that you allow yourself here to gain what is called a polite entry. We're going to passively just try to, enter that domicile through legal means and through non-destructive means. And we have the moral authority. That's what I love about this book. He talks about, do you have the moral authority? Is this the most effective way to get in? Did you check the door? Maybe the door is actually unlocked. So, I really like that book for that. And for practical lock picking, it's the same thing as tactical lock picking, but polite entry specifically it's really for non-emergency type situations where I don't need to go dynamic or, super ballistic on something, because somebody's life is in danger. So that's the part about that I wanted to touch on. Now, having been a locksmith and having worked for Papa Lock and worked in a shop as a locksmith and a road tech, and also having been a participant of Locksport I've been in Locksport for over 10 years now, 15 years. I've had friends that transition from Locksport to locksmithing, and they try to say, man, this is completely different. Like, this has nothing to do with Locksport. And I'm like, well, that's not true. And I try to point it out, but they're just completely disillusioned. And then I have locksmiths that try to get into Locksport and they say, man, this has nothing to do with locksmithing. And there's some truth to that, but they're always disillusioned. When you've done both, you start to see the similarities and the connections. And the connection is this: tactical lockpickers or practical lockpicking, these are courses that you can learn inside of a weekend. They're going to teach you the tips and tricks of the type of locks that are going to be in that particular demographic. So if you go to North Carolina and you take a class, let's say with Sky Pirate Actual and his wife Mai, Mai Singletary, and you take their course with Cloaked Entry Co., okay, or you were to take a course in Georgia with Pat Watson here, you're going to learn how to bypass North American locks, specifically locks that are going to be very more common on the East Coast of North America. You're going to learn bypass techniques, you're going to learn lock picking, everything else like that. What I would recommend that if you are based out of Western Europe, to find similar courses, not just go online, but go through courses where you can have people who have field experience and saying, this is what we encountered in the field here in Western Europe. These are the type of locks, these are the type of doors, and that's really gonna help a lot. Unless you have been in Locksport for a decade, or unless you are a trained locksmith, sometimes it can be very hard to assess your security environment. So these classes can give you a really great warm-up to that. When I went to Oaxaca, Mexico, to visit my wife's family, because I have these backgrounds, all of these backgrounds, I was able to do a really great assessment of the locks that were in the area. I recognized that the Phillips used an SC1 keyway and KW1 keyways, and I recognized the different brands and models of the different types of brands of locks and everything. And I saw cruciform locks and dimple locks, and I saw locks that were installed on doors, but I also saw little strings on the side of the door that you could just pull the string and it'll open the door. Just a lot of really funny stuff like that. So my recommendation is get actual training in the tactical lock picking, in the polite entry, covert entry world, and then build your tools based off of what you learn, not off of what I can recommend you. I know that was very long-winded, but I hope I was able to get to that point. So while I could tell you to carry a lockpick set and a bypass tool set and some backup stuff like leashes and stuff, I can't give you the skill set required to be good at using them. And I could say, well, you just need to practice. I don't think practice is enough either. You need to actually consider going to your local locksmith and ask them, what are the most common locks in the neighborhood? What are the most common locks in the city? What are some locks that I'm going to run into that are maybe older and are discontinued, that are no longer provided by local local locksmiths, but law enforcement may still run into them? And maybe consider working as an apprentice in the local locksmith shop, like 1 day a week or even 1 day a month, and asking if you can do some ride-alongs with their lockout guy and go on some ride-alongs and learn about the trade of locksmithing, because it'll make you better at your job, I promise. One thing I don't like about this book and Pat Watson's opinion is his opinion on locksmithing in lock sport. And he says that they don't really have a place in tactical lock picking. I disagree. I think a sniper has a place on the battlefield, even though a sniper necessarily his job isn't to be an infantryman, his job is to be a sniper. But that's like saying a sniper spends all of his day shooting long distances. He would never be good at being an infantryman going door to door. Well, if you were a sniper, if your job is not to train going door to door, yeah, I wouldn't want to get in that realm. But the things do kind of correlate with each other, and I can quickly learn and create the skills required of an infantryman because I may be a sniper, and vice versa. The skills for locksmithing actually do translate into locksport, and the skills for locksport do translate into locksmithing. Locksmiths will say you never use locksport in the field, but that's because they're not locksporters. They don't have the skills of a locksporter. And locksporters will say we never, someone may say we never use locksmithing, but that's because you never learned to be a locksmith. They do interchange if you know the skills, okay? Let me give you one more small piece of advice here, and that is strength is never a weakness, okay? If I'm a wrestler, learning boxing and powerlifting and weightlifting and bodybuilding and, I don't know, learning how to throw a spear, while those things don't make me better at wrestling, they're not going to make me worse at wrestling either. Strengths are never a weakness, all right? So getting better at locksport is not going to make you worse at your tactical lockpicking. It will make you better at tactical lockpicking. While they may not be identical, they build off of each other. A tactical lockpicker can teach me everything he knows inside of 2 weekends, but it would take him 15 years to get my skill set in locksport. Alternatively, a locksmith can build decades of experience in locksmithing and never have to rely on locksport or tactical lockpicking. But if he were to dabble in all of these, he becomes a better locksmith. So don't assume that because you are in law enforcement and you need to focus on your practical lockpicking skills or your tactical lockpicking skills that you cannot benefit from locksport. The better you are at lockpicking, the better you are at assessing your situation. One thing I don't like about some people that are in the tactical lockpicking realm is they make the assumption that because I will spend 20 hours picking a high security lock in the comfort of my home, that's something that I'm immediately going to jump into doing out in the real world in the field. Actually, because I have picked Medico locks and multi-lock and Asa Abloy locks and all manner of high security locks, I am the first to look at one of those locks and say, hell no, I am not even going to waste my time. Case in point, let me give you a story. I went next door to my neighbor. He knocked on my door and said, hey, I accidentally locked myself out of the house. I took my kid for a walk. My wife left and she went through the garage, closed the garage door. We didn't have a key and she didn't know that we were outside. So I cannot get back inside and my wife is gone for the next 4 hours. And it was super hot. And I said, no problem, I can get you in. And I said, let's go through the back door. And for whatever reason, I don't remember why I skipped the front door. I went straight to the back door. I get to the back door and the first thing that I saw on the back door was, let me show you. Hang on. Where did that marker go? The marker disappeared on me. Go figure. All right. I mean, it's nowhere here. The marker is evaporated into thin air. It's gone. So the first thing I saw on that lock was a quick set, whatever keyway. I don't remember what the keyway of quick set looks like, but it's very basic. This is more of an SC1, but I saw a quick set keyway and then I saw one other thing. I saw this. As soon as I knew it was a quick set, I was like, oh, I got this thing dicked. And then I took a knee and I saw that little hole and I immediately realized, nope, I cannot pick that lock. That would be a mistake. I cannot pick that lock. It's not going to happen because this is a quick set smart key that is a purple belt level lock. It's considered high security, though it does have weaker plastic, or not plastic, but it has plastic parts and it has sliders and I could probably force myself or do a forcible entry with this lock. I'm not going to pick this lock. Not here, not now. So I immediately did not touch that lock. That was a benefit of locksport. That was not a benefit of locksmithing, and that aided in my tactical lock picking to be able to find a different entry into the house. I went to the front door. The front door was not an interchangeable cord or a quick set smart key that allows you to interchange to actually rekey the cylinder using the smart key function. It was actually just a normal pin tumbler quick set lock with a KW1 keyway, and I just raked that lock within seconds and was able to get in through. That is the benefit of locksmith or locksport as it pertains to tactical lock picking. I just thought I'd throw that out there. No hate on Pat Watson, but the guy does not see any practicality in locksport, and I do. I think that when you are a wrestler and you have wrestled your entire life, not only do you know how to size somebody up based off of weight, because your life revolves around training with guys who are always cutting weight to make weight and they wrestle, but to get into a fist fight out in the street, that doesn't mean that I'm going to immediately resolve to shooting for a double leg takedown on concrete. Just because I spend my whole life wrestling could also mean that I'm very knowledgeable of violence and how terrible things can get really quick. And I may be the first person to avoid a violent confrontation because I've spent my whole life studying combat sports. So wrestling is not a weakness as it pertains to fighting. Strength is never a weakness, and locksport is not a weakness to tactical lockpicking. So I know I just went on probably a 20-minute rant there, but let's talk about our level 3 here. And I already lost the page. There we go, third line gear, and that's going to be the things that you don't carry on you that you cannot fit in your bag. So these are going to be vehicle entry tools. These are going to be in the trunk of your car. They're going to be dynamic entry tools. Again, they're going to be in the trunk of your car, and that's all going to be based off of what your department is going to allow you to carry. And I cannot recommend that somebody just carry vehicle entry tools unless you have the training and the experience to use those. Otherwise, you're just going to get the tool stuck, and it's going to make you and your department look just that much worse. So all in all, let's recap here really quick. My recommendation for you is to carry a pocket type tool for everyday carry, your first line gear. And that should just be some type of pin tumbler tool like this. Just like you carry a spare handcuff key, I would highly recommend you carry a small pocket-sized lockpick set. My second recommendation is going to be for your off-body carry or your line 2, and that's going to be a full-size bypass kit, whether that be Covert Instruments or whether that be Southern Specialties or something like that. It really doesn't matter. Bypass tools don't need to be super strong. They're going to get destroyed over time anyways. You can go with Southern Specialties. You can go with Covert Instruments. I prefer Covert Instruments. I like the tool selection and the tool steel, but Southern Specialties makes really great tools too. And then I like to use Leashy tools here in North America. I have no idea what's in Western Europe. Only you can know that. And I like to have full-size lockpicks. Guys, I literally have lockpick sets with my name on them from German manufacturers, but for everyday carry, I like to have full-size lockpicks. In the comfort of my home, it's a different story. I will use Multipick. I'll use the tools that I love to use, Jimy Longs, whatever. But if I'm in the field, I want to be comfortable. I want to have full-size picks because I want to be successful, and I'm going to have an assortment of tools. This is based off of my current skill set and my experience. For my third line gear, I do carry larger tools. I do carry the automotive tools and all that stuff. I don't keep automotive tools in my vehicle right now because I don't want them stolen from my vehicle. But if I was working still in private security, you better believe I would have those in my vehicle because I had the skill sets to deploy them. So that's my recommendation. Get this book, Tactical Lockpicking, Volume 1, Foundations by Pat Watson. He is current law enforcement. And go through this book, and I would highly recommend you take a look at the line 1, line 2, and line 3, and then get some actual training in your location, in your locale. Get some actual training from people that understand your demographic, the locks that you're going to run into, the techniques that are required, the tools that are necessary to get through those obstacles. The reason why I highly recommend Southern Specialties and Covert Instruments is because they sell not only lockpicks, but they also sell the bypass tools. Trust me, I'm a big fan of Multipick and Jimy Longs and Law Lock Tools. And Law Lock Tools does have some bypass tools as well. But when you can just go to one place and get lockpicks and bypass tools, that's my #1 recommendation. For polite entry, emergency services, law enforcement, it's going to be Covert Instruments. My second recommendation is going to be the Southern Specialties with their bypass tools and their lockpick kits. I'm not a fan of picking locks with these, but it's still doable. These are very good tools. They're very good tools. They're no different than a jackknife. I can just open this up and I can rake a lock. It's not a problem. So it just comes down to what you're comfortable with. You're going to have to build that experience and make this a hobby and just pick locks for fun. People think that because Locksporters pick locks in the comfort of their home in air conditioning that we would absolutely just melt and die the second we step out in 80 or 90 degree weather and pick a lock, you know, at night or something like that. I don't understand that concept. The longer I spend in a dojo training, the better I am prepared for a battle on the street. Nobody in martial arts trains on a street environment, on glass, out in the weather all day long, every day. They don't do that. Soldiers don't even do that. Soldiers will practice in, in mount towns and mock, vehicle setups and, safe environments. It's better to sweat on the mats than it is to bleed on the streets, so to speak. So the more time that I spend in the comfort of my home picking locks, the more comfortable I am picking locks in the field. People think it's the opposite. They think that it's a crutch. It's not a crutch. I can do everything that these tactical lock pickers can do in the field. I can do everything that they can do, and then I can do things that they cannot do in the comfort of my own home. So everything here feeds off of each other. Strength is never a weakness. Get good at locksmithing, locksport, and tactical lock picking. Set yourself some time limits here for 30 seconds raking, 30 seconds single pin picking, 30 seconds for bump key, and then, one other technique, whether it be a leashy tool or a foil impressioning tool or some type of kinetic attack. And then, you can try again, or you can try another attack vector. All of that is covered very well in this book. This is a very good book. I highly recommend it, especially if you are in the law enforcement field. That's all I have for today, folks. Let me know in the comments your thoughts on this. I'd like to hear your experience or your stories. I realize that in our hobby of lock sport, we don't talk about locks that are in use. But guys, this is not Reddit. This is not Discord. This is not Facebook. This is the Sandman YouTube channel. You can talk whatever you want in the comments down below, as long as it's polite and as long as you are friendly. Then let's have that conversation below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. That's all I have for today, folks. Let me know, and I'll catch you guys next time.